I would love to welcome everybody. I'm Amy Gutmann. I'm president of the University of Pennsylvania, and I have the privilege of chairing the Presidential Commission for the Study of Bioethical Issues on behalf of myself and our vice chair, Jim Wagner, who is the president of Emory University. I'd like to welcome you to our 20th meeting. Let me begin by noting the presence of our designated federal official, who is also Bioethics Commission Executive Director, Lisa M. Lee. Lisa, please stand so we know who you are. We all do, on the commission members. And I'd also like our commission members to go around and introduce themselves. Let me begin with Anita.
Thank you. I'm Anita Allen. I'm Vice Provost for Faculty at the University of Pennsylvania and Professor of Law and Philosophy.
I'm Nelson Michael. I direct the U.S. Military HIV Research Program at the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research.
Christine Grady at the Department of Bioethics at the NIH Clinical Center.
Stephen Hauser, Chair of Neurology at UC San Francisco.
I'm Raju Kuchalapati. I'm a professor of genetics and medicine at Harvard Medical School.
Dan Solmacy, the Department of Medicine and Divinity School, the University of Chicago.
Barbara Atkinson, the Planning Dean for New School of Medicine at University of Nevada, Las Vegas.
And is Nita Farhani on the phone? Not yet. Well, Nita is sorry she can't be here, but not too sorry because she just delivered a wonderful young, obviously young, member, a wonderful little girl into the world. She and her husband named Estrella, otherwise will be known as Ella. So we all congratulate Nita, and she may be on the phone later in our meetings. I'm going to say a few words of introduction and then ask Jim to say a few words. We have a lot of work to do in this 1.5 days. As an advisory body to the President of the United States, our commission considers ethical issues with a particular focus on U.S. perspectives and policies. But it's been the case for many, many decades, and it's only gotten more evident that bioethical issues are global in their nature and in their reach. And you can see that just by looking at U.S. global engagement and its implications in relations to a variety of health, science, and technology-related ethical concerns. The most obvious is the Ebola epidemic, which affected our country after it affected very seriously and is still affecting 3 countries in West Africa. The ability to distinguish between what's in our nation's interest and what's in the interests of the world is increasingly difficult and perhaps a futile exercise in the case of bioethical issues of health. We have turned our attention, beginning at our November meeting in Salt Lake City, to U.S. engagement to the global response to the current Ebola epidemic. And we focused on what lessons might be learned from recent U.S. response to Ebola at home and abroad. And today, the Commission has asked speakers to focus on 3 particular issues in the context of the U.S. response to the current Ebola epidemic: quarantine and travel monitoring and restrictions, randomized control trials, and the collection, use, and international sharing of biospecimens for research. It's really, those issues are front and center. There are many other issues. We acknowledge that robust and reflective deliberation about complex ethical challenges and public health emergencies is not best done in the midst of an epidemic. That is, the whole point of deliberation and education is to prepare us for confronting epidemics speedily, the way they must optimally be confronted. It's not that one stops deliberating, but one does pause for a moment and act very quickly. Deliberation is about discussion and action. It's not just discussion. But to deliberate, to begin deliberating when there's an epidemic is the worst possible way of engaging in deliberation, other than not engaging it at all. So the purpose of our commission is to think, deliberate, and issue a set of recommendations for how we can best learn from what we did well and what we did not so well in a serious crisis situation. By the way, the crisis is not over. I was pleased to see that the front page of the Washington Post is continuing to cover what is happening with Ebola, and I couldn't help but think that even though it subsided in Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Guinea, the three West African countries which have been hardest hit by far, if any three states in the United States had the ongoing incidence of Ebola that those three countries now have, we would still be in crisis mode. So given the global nature of ethics and the global nature of the Ebola crisis, we are still facing a crisis. Not to mention, which we can in our deliberations, measles in the United States, which underlines the importance of education and deliberation in an ongoing way, that one can never take for granted protections. And when one does and thinks that vaccines which are effective are no longer necessary for a subgroup, that's a problem. So we need to continue to think about that as well. I believe that the overarching theme of all these discussions is that major infectious disease epidemics are a matter of U.S. concern for both ethical and prudential reasons. We are obligated to engage in such devastating outbreaks from a global justice perspective, and we're also considering the ability of infectious diseases to travel in our interconnected world. It is prudent for us as a country to address epidemics at their source. It is therefore both in our humanitarian and our national interests not to wait until diseases come to our shores before we begin, and in the case of Ebola, continue to address how best to respond to them as we're doing today. A very important theme is that we as a country and we as professionals and we as a public best respond in partnerships with others. And now returning to today's meeting, I want to take, and then I'll turn it over to Jim to say a few words. I just wanted to preface that as a framework for how we have been as a commission deliberating, and we have actually will spend more time doing so, and extremely fortunate to have a group of distinguished guests to present to us today. I want to take just a moment to explain how we will take public comments. At the registration table, there are comment cards, but also bioethics staff members here in the room have comment cards as well, and I always like to recognize our fabulous staff. So would you all stand up and hold up your cards? So anyone who wants a card, just there are lots of people here. Within one or two people of you, just ask for a card, write down your comment or question. Somebody will pass it up to Jim or myself, and as long as we have time, we'll take them. And if we don't have time, we will get back to you and answer them one way or the other. So thank you all in advance for participating in our discussion. And now our Vice Chair, Jim Wagner. Jim, would you say a few words?
And in very few words. First of all, to commissioners, welcome. It's good to be working with you again. To guests, those right before us and those who will be following you, welcome. It's good to have you here. Want to reiterate your two big points about timing and points about scope. That with regard to timing, it is important to deliberate not just during a health emergency, but to do so ahead of time. Ebola does indeed give us a highly visible, if not currently the most lethal, but highly visible example from which to capture public interest, capture our own interest, capture government agency interest, in order that we might adopt better practices for timing about our deliberations and preparation for health emergencies. And the second point you make is scope. We are very comfortable with the words public health and global health, but I think our minds imagine that there must therefore exist something else called local health. And in fact, at least with regard to communicable diseases, it may be that there is no such thing as local health. And if we're going to pay attention to ensuring our local health, it will require that we look globally and act globally. Last points I want to make, I was given some statistics. This is our 20th public meeting since the commission was established by President Obama back in November of '09. We've met quarterly all around the country to discuss and deliberate on topics we've chosen, topics we've been assigned. We've heard from exceptional speakers. In fact, something over 200 speakers from around the world have come to advise us. And they have provided the commission with the critical background, the information, the insights that have helped us form all of these recommendations. And you guys, we guys, I guess, have deliberated more than 135 hours in public anyway. Actually, our formal deliberations have to be in public as required. We do swap some email conversation around in the off time as well, and there's enormous work. The staff neglected to put in the equal or larger number of hours that they themselves put into this list. So we want to thank you and applaud you as well. And with that, I think it's appropriate to get on with meeting 20. Thank you very much.
Thank you.